Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to my channel. My name is Kylie. I'm a film student studying at California Lutheran University here in California. So today's list of movies are movies that are all rated pretty low on Rotten Tomatoes, but they're movies that I myself love and would have rated much higher. So when I was making this list of movies, I actually came up with 16 movies, but that's too much for one video, I feel like. So I'm only going to talk about 8 of them in this video, and then there will be a part 2, so keep an eye out for that. I got this idea from Sarah Hawkinson. She has a really good horror channel. She does really good reviews and stuff. I'll link her channel below because I get a lot of inspiration from her. But yeah, I always feel like horror movies have a way harder time scoring well on Rotten Tomatoes and things like that because, I don't know, for whatever reason, horror is just judged a lot more harshly than most other genres, at least in my opinion. So I'm gonna start from the highest rated on this list to the lowest, and believe me, it goes real low, like surprisingly low. So I'm saving the best or the worst for last. So number 1 on this list is Scream 4. Now I wanted to make this list with all scores lower than 60, but this is right at 60. And I know that that's not terribly low, but it's also not as high as I think this movie deserves. So Scream 4, it has been many years since the Ghostface killer cut a deadly path through the town of Woodsboro. In order to get over trauma of those horrific events, Sydney Prescott has written a self-help book. She returns to Woodsboro for her book tour and reconnects with old friends Gale Weathers and Sheriff Dewey. However, Sydney's arrival also sparks the return of Ghostface, putting Sydney and everyone she loves in danger. So I know that this is the 4th film, and a lot of people didn't ask for 4 Scream movies, or even 3, or whatever. But it has almost all of the original cast, like Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox and David Arquette, and it's a really good cast, so obviously you know that it's acted well. It also has Emma Roberts in it. Not a fan of her as a human, but as an actress, I do enjoy her. She's also in American Horror Story, and I've loved most of her characters in that as well. But this is the 4th movie in this series, and yet I think that it still somehow pulls off a rather fresh approach to the super self-aware kind of dark comedy genre that Scream basically created. It was the first extremely self-aware horror movie, I think. Just in the way that it was so extremely meta with almost everything that happened within the movie is why I enjoy it so much, because, I don't know, self-awareness is just really important to me in movies, I guess. Another really fun thing about this movie is that Kristen Bell and who else? Oh, Lucy Hale. They both have cameos in this movie, and it's really just to serve the first couple of scenes, but it's still so much fun opening a movie with these actresses that you know pretty well, especially like Lucy Hale. She's done a lot of horror movies since Pretty Little Liars, and she's definitely kind of typecasted, but it's awesome because it works so well, and I think that's also a really fun touch of just self-awareness in this movie. How many times am I gonna say self-awareness? It's important. I don't So yeah, for all those reasons, I think it's well written. I think it's a fresh installment to the series. Great actors. I just think it deserves higher than a 60%. I just feel like there needs to be more respect on that Scream movie name. Number 2 on this list is Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. And this one is rated at a 55%. So this movie is a chronicle of the crimes of Ted Bundy from the perspective of his long-term girlfriend who refused to believe the truth about him for years. So this movie stars Zac Efron and Lily Collins. I think most people were made pretty aware of this movie because it is a Netflix movie and it has some pretty high-profile actors in it. And so for that reason, right off the bat, you know it's really well acted, okay? I know that some people found this movie to be insensitive, and there was one critic that also said Berlinger's film gets sucked into the gravity of sensational events that are already a matter of public record and spends so much time meticulously recreating them that the perspective is diluted. See, I find this really interesting because when real life events are so fascinating and so dramatic that you don't have to dramatize them at all and you can just basically recreate them for a movie, I think that's kind of sick. I mean, obviously, in this case, it's terrible because Ted Bundy was an awful murderous man, but just in general, I mean, if you can do that and not have to embellish the truth really whatsoever to create your movie, I think that's cool. Some people might find that pointless because it's already, you know, everyone already knows about everything that's gonna happen, whatever, but I thought this movie was really well done. I didn't think that the plot dragged whatsoever. I enjoy the perspective they took through Lily Collins' character, his long-term girlfriend, and yeah, so for all those reasons, I'm just really surprised that it was only rated a 55%, because I know that most people that watched this movie enjoyed it. I know that true crime fans really enjoyed it. Fans of Zac Efron and Lily Collins all enjoyed it, so I'm really confused confused. I don't know who didn't like this movie. I don't really understand. The third movie on this list is A Cure for Wellness. Now I know that most people really don't like this movie and were really shaken up by it, but kind of for those reasons, I really liked it. It's about a Wall Street stockbroker who travels to a remote location in the Swiss Alps to retrieve his company's CEO from an idyllic but mysterious wellness center. He soon suspects that the miraculous treatments are not what they seem. His sanity is tested when he unravels the spa's terrifying secrets and finds himself diagnosed with the same curious illness that keeps all of the guests there longing for a cure. So this is rated at a 42%. Not too low, but we're getting down there. So this movie stars Dane DeHaan. You might recognize him from the Amazing Spider-Man movies, and then it also stars Jason Isaacs, who you might know as Lucius Malfoy, among other roles. So in my video of 5 horror movies that I will never watch again, I talked about the fact that I can't handle body horror, which is very ironic because that's actually most of like what I love from this movie. But I feel like they do the body horror in such a way that it's not overdone and they don't overshare, like overshow things. I think they do it a perfect amount that you can imagine what's going on and you really don't even need to see it because the sounds or what's suggested is gross enough, and I think that they kind of walk that line without crossing it. The only thing that is seriously messed up about this movie that I really don't like is there's a small incestual moment. It's very brief. It's not a huge part of the movie by any means. It's only in a very small moment, but still, that's Anyways, besides that, it is one of the most beautifully shot movies that I, quite frankly, have ever seen. I mean, just by looking at the trailer here, you can see, like, you're getting a little taste of just how beautiful this movie is. And a lot of people have said that this movie was too long. It's over 2 hours long. So this movie is 2 hours and 26 minutes long, and I definitely think that that is too long for this movie and for what it is, but I can honestly forgive it just because of how beautiful it is. So even if the plot was dragging or confusing or whatever, it wasn't too distracting for me just because visually I was so happy just to look at it. And another thing that's awesome about this movie is it is not predictable, okay? Like, parts of it are, sure, because you know already, like, based on the trailer and what I've said, he arrives at this place and you kind of just assume that, like, okay, people get stuck there because they have some fake illness, but they're really, like, killing their guests, blah, blah, blah. There is so much more to the story. It goes so much deeper than that, and it is so worth a watch. Movie number 4 is Dark Skies. This movie has a 41% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I find really surprising, and I'll tell you why. So Dark Skies. Lacey and Daniel Barrett share a peaceful life in the suburbs with their sons Jesse and Sam. However, that peace soon shatters with a series of disturbing events that escalate when it becomes clear that their family is being targeted by an unimaginably terrifying, deadly, and possibly alien threat. Daniel and Lacey draw on their courage and determination to protect their family and identify what is after them. So this movie, I feel like, is highly underrated. I never really hear anybody talking about it, but it's a really good movie, and it's starring people like Carrie Russell. She plays the mom in this movie. She has a very haunting performance, and I really, really enjoyed it. J.K. Simmons is also in this movie. He's awesome. We know him from State Farm commercials and obviously several movies. I don't know why State Farm came to mind first, but okay. And as far as alien movies goes, I think that the concept of it is extremely original, and you will know what I'm talking about if you see the movie. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'll just leave it at that. And like I was talking about with The Cure for Wellness, I feel like this movie kind of goes up to the line but doesn't ever cross it in terms of like what they show, because I think because this movie is PG-13, I believe, so obviously there's certain things that they can't do without the R rating. But I think that for this movie it actually makes it more effective because it's so frightening what you can't see. So definitely give this movie a watch. I highly recommend it. So the 5th movie I'm going to be talking about is Scream 3. Well, actually, I'm not really going to talk about it too much because I just talked about Scream 4. It's funny because in the description they call this the last Scream movie, so it's funny, but okay, real quick, I'm editing right now and I could not find the trailer for Scream 3 on YouTube. Does it not exist? So anyways, just enjoy me looking down and reading off of my computer. The last installment in the Scream trilogy is set in Hollywood, where Stab 3 is being shot, with Gale Weathers and Dwight Riley on set as advisors to Jennifer Jolie. Unfortunately, a killer decides to off the cast in the order of the screenplay, and only Sid Prescott, now in hiding until the killer tracks her down, can solve the riddle. So this movie is rated a 39%, which I just find so surprising because, to be honest, it is my least favorite installment of the Scream movies, but nonetheless, I still think that it has its own original flavor. It has the flavor. So a 39% is just a little bit confusing to me. I think it deserves higher. The sixth movie that I'm going to be talking about is The Boy. This movie is rated at a 30%, so we're starting to get pretty low down there. The Boy. A young American named Greta takes a job as a nanny for an 8-year-old boy in a remote English village. To her surprise, Greta learns that the child of her new employers is a life-size doll. They care for the doll as if it was human, which helps the couple to cope with the death of their own son 20 years earlier. When Greta violates a list of strict rules, a series of disturbing and inexplicable events brings her worst fears to life, leading her to believe that the doll is alive. So I know that doll movies aren't horribly original at this point, but this movie takes a really fresh take on it, especially given the twist at the end. I'm not going to give any spoilers. Don't worry, just know that there is an insane twist at the end, and I think that that redeems basically the entire movie, like however slow you might think it is. I never thought it was slow. I personally thought that the plot was pretty evenly paced, and I liked it, but whatever. There's also an extremely strong subplot to the movie, so the main character that you're dealing with, she has layers to her because her subplot is kind of twisted and everything kind of ties together at the end, which I enjoy. And I also tend to forgive movies a lot when they look really good. So this movie is also beautifully shot. It's at this, I don't even want to call it a house. Like, this thing is like a castle, okay? They're shooting it at this, like, castle, basically. There's so many, like, dark tones, a lot of black. It's just very visually pleasing and enjoyable to me. I'm just surprised that it got a 30% is all. Also, not to mention, if you look at some of the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, most of them are generally saying nice things, even if they gave it a low rating, so I am confusion. Alright, the seventh movie that I'm going to talk about is The Lazarus Effect. This movie has a 17%. Very low score. In The Lazarus Effect, medical researcher Frank, his fiancée Zoe, and their team have achieved the impossible. They have found a way to revive the dead. After a successful but unsanctioned experiment on a lifeless animal, they are ready to make their work public. However, when their dean learns what they've done, he shuts them down. Zoe is killed during an attempt to recreate the experiment, leading Frank to test the process on her. Zoe is revived, but something evil is within her. So I saw this movie in theaters, and then I don't know if I ever actually saw it again, but I remember loving it, and I remember being truly horrified. And this movie stars some pretty big people like Olivia Wilde. Okay, she was the director of Booksmart, she's acted in countless other things. And then you have Donald Glover, who, need I say more, is Childish Gambino, has also acted in several things, makes amazing music. What can't he do? I digress. But one of the critics said, the movie is a terrible recycling of old ideas, ranging from classics like Frankenstein and The Monkey's Paw to 2014's Lucy, not to mention the routine effects and jump scares. See, this review, I have a little problem with it, because while they are recycling some old ideas, especially Frankenstein, because it's not a classic take on spouse revives dead spouse kind of thing. It definitely takes a fresh perspective and adds some elements that were brand new, at least to me at the time, maybe not now, but I don't think that this movie deserves to be read to filth like that. It was acted very well, as you could tell by the people I told you that were in it. The special effects were pretty good. I really had no problems with the CGI, at least at the time. But yeah, so that 17%, that baffles me. Alright, and last on this list is Prom Night from 2008. This movie comes in at a whopping 7%. 7 out of 100, 7%. So this is a very, very loose remake of the 1980s version, which is starring Jamie Lee Curtis. At high school prom, Donna is about to come face to face with the murderer from her past. Will Donna and her friends escape the psychopath? There were some other parts of that logline synopsis that I didn't read because I kind of feel like it gives some stuff away, so I didn't want to include that. So if you can, I would avoid looking that up before you watch the movie itself. But this movie stars Brittany Snow, who we know and love from Pitch Perfect, among many other movies. It Idris Elba is also in this movie. He plays a detective, which Idris, if you see this by chance, by some small chance, I hope that you're doing well. I hope you're not too heavily afflicted by the virus and that you get better soon. And then you also have Ming-Na Wen. You might recognize her from Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Kellen Lutz is even briefly in this movie, who we know and love from Twilight. So the cast is pretty stacked, and that's always fun to see, especially if they're just cameos and they kind of pop up here and there and you're like, oh, it's that person, oh, it's that, yeah, nice. Pretty big names, so like a 7%? So critics call this movie monotonous and corny, but I find most slasher movies to be monotonous and corny because everyone's just dying, usually by the hands of one person, a serial killer, so it's monotonous and the acting is usually not great, so it's corny. But you have pretty big names in this movie, so it's really not that corny. And I also definitely find value in movies that you can have on, like just in the background of like a Halloween party or something like that, because of like the gore visuals and stuff. There's a lot of fun elements to this movie that are worth something and definitely worth more than a cumulative 7%. It just doesn't make sense to me. So anyways, I could really talk about these movies for a very long time, but I don't want this YouTube video to be like a half hour long. It's already gonna be pretty long. Alright, so I'm gonna finish up here, but let me know what you guys think of these movies if you've seen them. If not, and you're bored in quarantine or whatever right now, definitely give them a watch and let me know what you think, because I love all these movies, even the one rated at 7%. So I'm curious to know what other people think as well. Again, I hope you're staying safe, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye.